Performance Dimensions, dedicated to law enforcement training, information, and technology for tomorrow.
For most police officers, if you're on the ground and you're not handcuffing, you may be losing. However, that's not always the case, especially if you're trained in tactical ground fighting skills. Here, Sergeant Tracy Robinson of the New York City Police Department successfully shows how to use tactical ground fighting techniques. Along with Sergeant Tracy Robinson, we also have Detective Chu of the New York City Police Department. Sergeant Robinson gives us some of the important points of tactical ground fighting.
Back in about 1972, in New York City, female police officers first started going out on patrol on the street, whereas previously they had been matrons in the precinct taking care of female prisoners. Also, the height requirement and the weight requirement was dropped from a standard of, I believe it was 5'8" or 9", to no actual requirement at all. So what started to happen there were a lot smaller and lighter police officers, both male and female, joining the force, and this is actually nationwide. What started to happen was there was a trend where a lot of officers were getting knocked down to the ground, where previously they hadn't recognized that this was an actual problem. And so police trainers started to address it by using what was already pre-existing martial arts ground fighting techniques. And some of those techniques were either the side stance or a crab walking type thing. Now for martial arts, this might be acceptable because they might only be confronting one opponent. And from the ground on a side fighting stance, perhaps they might have a strong kick, but they don't have access to their equipment. And for police officers, that's not the greatest thing in the world. What started to happen was at Modern Warrior, we started to recognize that there was a problem. And we started developing a ground fighting system, which we introduced into the police community somewhere in the mid-1980s. We wanted to address the things that are vital for police officers, that when they're in a confrontation in the street, they have to be able to get to their equipment. They need access to their portable radio, they need access to their baton, they need access to their firearm. They also have to be able to do more than one thing at a time. So when we developed our ground fighting system, we took all of those things into account. And the system that we came up with is very economical, it's very practical, and the officer is able to utilize all of those things, and also very economical. You know, think about this. When you're out on the street, you're wearing your vest, you're wearing your full-duty equipment, you might have on a jacket, It could be a very cold day, your muscles are very tight and tired, and now you get into a confrontation. Just those things in and of themselves can make you tire very, very rapidly. So the system that we developed is very economical and also allows the officer to conserve their energy so that they can last through the entire confrontation and still have enough to get through it, to call for help, to handcuff, to do whatever has to be done. Adam 9 is 84 at the scene. We'll advise. Check and advise further. Sir, is there a problem? Did you call the police? How can I help you? Sir, are you okay? Adam 9, 84 on the scene. I'll advise if I need further assistance. Sir, did you call the police? Are you okay? Can I help you? What seems to be the problem, sir? Can I help you? Sir, can I help you? 84, officer needs assistance, 384 Broadway. Send assistance right away, 384 Broadway. In the first scenario that you saw, the officer was disarmed and was shot and killed with their own firearm. Unfortunately, this has been very common across the United States in the last 10 years or so. And the reason being that they were fighting from a situation where they had no access to their equipment and they had a difficult time in blocking. Okay, I want to reenact just a little bit about what happened to that officer that made those things go wrong. Okay, what happened initially was the officer was charged, and when she landed flat out. Okay, and she was dazed. The first thing she did was she put her hands up on the ground like so, leaving no access to any type of blocking ability or to the firearm or the equipment on the belt. She got kicked in the head. She landed back down on the ground, stunned a little bit. She went to get up, and she did what's known in martial arts circles as a crab walk. Now, the crab walk uses all four limbs for balance and for mobility. Okay? Think about this when you're wearing your vest and you have your equipment on, your duty belt, and you start trying to move around like this, how easily it is to get tired very, very fast. The officer started trying to chase the opponent like this, the assailant, and the assailant very easily was able to get around the officer. And what happened was he came around and broke the arm that she was using for balance. Then when the officer fell down, she was disarmed and she was shot. Okay. In the second scenario with the same situation, the things that the officer did were just a little bit different, but they ended up saving her life. Number one, when she was charged, she didn't stiffen up. She went with it. Okay, she went with the throw. She just pinned the assailant's head to her side, and he flipped over. Once she landed down on the ground, she pulled herself into a small target. She turned, she drew her radio and called for assistance. Then she drew her baton, put it into a tuck position, and when the assailant came in, she did a baton technique to his leg, which gave her an opportunity to get into a good position. And then when the assailant came in, she was able to block and strike out at the legs. And then from there, Once he got in close, when he brought his leg in, she just did a throw and took him down into handcuffing position. Okay? In that instance, she had access to all of the equipment on her belt. She was able to call for help, call for backup, let somebody know that she was in trouble, and she was able to block successfully. And if you notice, she didn't get hurt at all. The assailant was in a world of trouble, but she was okay. She also had plenty of energy to get through the rest of the fight. She was able to maintain position and to take him down to the ground and get him into position for handcuffing.
Hey guys, what's going on? Come on, break it up. What's the problem here?
You may not want to defend yourself from the ground, but sometimes you don't have a choice.
I wasn't there. It was somebody else. Hey, back off. I wasn't around.
Hey guys, come on, what's going on? Break it up, all right?
In the second set of scenarios where we saw multiple opponents, the officer was approaching what appeared to be a dispute between two gentlemen. He walked up, and the person who was against the wall, the third assailant, had a club, which was unbeknownst to the officer. In that case, when he got hit, he stiffened up, okay, and went flat out onto the ground. At that point, he got into a side fighting stance, okay, and tried to address the people in front of him. He kicked out, but yet was unable to protect his spine, which is very, very vulnerable. The third assailant came behind him and took out his spine. Then what happened was the opponents moved in, pinned the officer to the ground. He happened to be right-handed, removed his firearm, and shot him. Okay? In the second situation now, with the multiple opponents, the officer had the same situation, but this time, when he got hit in the back of the head, he went into a forward roll. Okay, this is something that we stress at Modern Warrior, going with it rather than trying to resist the blow. Okay, he goes into the forward roll and kicks the opponent in front of him. Okay, takes him down to the ground. Then he withdrew his firearm and shot to the person who had the lead pipe over his head behind him. Then the third opponent, when he came in, he just redirected, took him down to the ground, and rolled over. Now he was ready to shoot if he had to.
If you want to be good at tactical ground fighting, you need to practice.
This first exercise that you just observed is designed to help the officer learn timing and distance and how to roll with keeping his eye on his opponent. If you noticed, when Doug does a roll, he keeps his eyes facing me, keeping his eye on his opponent, not losing sight. It's a timing exercise. In this exercise, Doug is learning how to use his feet independently to block the objects and also the timing so that he doesn't move too quickly and get kicked on a second account. The last exercise, he's going to be out prone with his firearm. It's just going to be an evasion exercise. Very often, police officers find themselves with a very large fear about being caught on the ground. So one of the first things we do when we're instructing is we try to break that fear. We take them through a very precise process, and we start them out slowly with a series of exercises designed to get them more confident about being on the ground. The first thing that we do is we have the officer from a squat position just push out, and with both hands flat out, they're going to take the ground position, okay, landing on the forearms and turning the head to the side. Okay. We bring them through this, and then we have them stand up. And from here, okay, he goes into the same position and just rolls over into ground fighting position. What this does is, if the officer had had his firearm in his hand and he landed straight out in that position, okay, it would save him from having involuntary discharge and also from crashing his hand into the ground and losing his firearm. So landing on the forearms is a very safe position if he has his firearm out in his hand already. So that's the reason why we start that. Okay? If he had his firearm in his hand, you'll see he can still do the same thing. Okay. The next thing we do is we want to bring the officer into a rolling position. Okay? We use our rolls for a variety of reasons. Sometimes we use it for offensive purposes, as you saw in the confrontational situations, and sometimes we use them for defensive purposes, or if the ground was really slippery and they tripped, we might go into a forward roll. So we have a variety of reasons that we practice a lot of rolls. Okay, the first thing we do is we start out in a squat position. He goes into the roll and right into ground fighting. From there, we take it from the roll into a squatting position. He comes up onto one leg. Okay, this can also be done with the firearm in the hand. So we have them next advance with the firearm in the hand and do the same roll again. Yeah, now he comes up into a kneeling position with the firearm in his hand. We practice not only against single opponents, but multiple opponents. We have to account that there might be somebody else who's coming up behind us. So one of the ways that we practice this is from the rolling position, we come up into that kneeling position, and then we're going to swing around 180 degrees to check behind us, make sure that if there is a second opponent, we're ready for him. Also, in a multiple opponent situation, we might have to scan the room to see where those other opponents were. Maybe as he was going into his forward roll, he lost sight of one of the opponents, so he's going to scan the room. He's going to turn 360 degrees when he comes up out of his roll. Notice that at any point in that spin, he can fire if he has to. Also, we want to talk about, from the ground fighting position, you just want to take the ground, Doug? You notice that he has his firearm pointed here through the legs. We've had a lot of firearms instructors who are experts practice this out at the range, and it has been found to be extremely accurate. This is an excellent firing position. Notice that his vital organs are protected, and he can use his legs to brace the firearm and get an excellent shot off if he has to. Okay, one of the things that we like to do in our training is practice firearms discipline. It's extremely important that the officer only fires the gun when he wants to. So what we'll do is we blindfold the officers after we get them used to falling, and we'll put them up with their feet against the bag, facing the opponent. In this case, I'll just have him close his eyes. What we do is we load the firearm with simunitions, and the person who is actually doing the pushing is padded up. Okay, we're just going to simulate here. But we have them padded up, and what we do is we make it a shoot, don't shoot situation. When the officer is pushed, he's going to have his finger on the trigger. Okay? What he has to do is decide, once he hits the ground, whether or not he's going to fire or not. If I had a knife in my hand and I'm coming after him, he fires. If I'm empty-handed, then he's just going to block if I attack. Okay? So what we're just going to do is just simulate. Okay, close your eyes. once you hit the ground, it would be bang, dang. Okay? Again. And one more time. Okay. In that situation, it would be a no shoot. Okay. We have found that if the officer is trained that way to look for an opportunity to whether the person is armed or not armed, they don't get an involuntary discharge. We've had a lot of success with this type of training. Okay. One of the things we also practice is getting behind cover. Various types of cover, different types of roles are used for different types of purposes. In this case, what we're going to do is Doug is going to do a flat roll over the bag, and he's going to aim back towards his opponent using the bag as cover. Okay, maybe in the street this might be a curb, or it could be a snowbank or something like that. So he's going to roll over it, he's going to stay behind it, then he's going to roll over looking for his opponent in case he has to shoot. Notice that he's keeping his eyes towards the opponent. He never ducks his head. That's one of the bad habits that martial artists get in the habit of. When they roll, they have a tendency to duck their chin to their chest. And in the street, for a cop, that could be a very bad situation because you could lose sight of your assailant. Okay, so we practice keeping the eyes facing towards the opponent as we're doing the roll. When Doug was on the ground and he was practicing the rolls and we were throwing the throw darts at him, these things are all designed to be able, for the officer to be able to adjust to the situation as it happens. Nothing happens exactly as you practice it in the street. Okay? Once you get out there, you have to be able to adjust. We practice a series of different exercises which allows the officer to adjust under stress. The first situation that you saw when we were throwing the throw darts, okay, by the way, if you want to try this yourself, the throw darts are just made of PVC with a golf ball on the end, and then they're wrapped up with tape and a little bit of foam. Okay? We use these for a variety of different exercises, but the first one, Doug was practicing lateral rolls and just keeping his eye on the opponent. In the event that there are multiple opponents, you want to know where they are. Okay? In the second one, when he's in the ground fighting position like this, it's a timing exercise for him to block the throw darts as they're coming his way and take them out of position. Okay, that's to get you so that you don't move too fast if someone is throwing a strike and you overblock. So we practiced that, and then the last thing was a lateral roll where he's going from side to side. Okay, all of these things were appropriate when you saw the confrontational scenario because he was able to adjust to the situation.
If you want to develop your tactical ground fighting skills, you have to develop your reflexes and think quickly.
As I move around Doug, he is able to keep pace with me by just spinning his body on the small of his back, okay? And at any time, if I step in range, he's able to strike out, okay? Just to show the conservation of energy and to show how much more efficient it is for the officer on the ground as opposed to the person who is trying to move in, we do an exercise where we try to get around to the officer's head. Okay, and it looks something like this. If you'll notice, I used a lot more energy than Doug did. He's hardly breathing heavy at all. Okay? And also, if you noticed, as I was going around him, in range of his feet, okay? Instead of maintaining a circle, I almost step into a kind of an oval pattern. And that brings me very close into his feet, leaving my limbs very susceptible. Okay, if this was a perfect world, the opponent would always stay at the officer's feet. But sometimes it doesn't always work out that way. And if there's multiple opponents, maybe I might end up at the officer's head, okay? If he can, he wants to get himself in a better position. So what he's going to do, he's just going to spin off my leg, just do a regular spin, and he's going to point his feet at me. I'm in a world of trouble now. He can hit me at will from here. All right? He blocks, he traps, and he spins. So what we do is we practice using different things like radios, batons, and things like that to do different techniques, blocking as well as the spins. Okay, in this case, we're going to practice with the radio and do that spin. In multiples, if Billy was here and Vito was here and Doug wanted to take Billy into Vito, he could do something like this. Okay. What he does is he uses one body to crash into the other, and then he actually kills two birds with one stone. Take both of them off with one throw. Another way that you can deal with multiple opponents is if Liz threw a strike to Doug, okay, he can block and take her right across his body into the second opponent. In this instance, it looks as if the officer is in a world of trouble, okay? We have an armed assailant with a knife. He's down on the ground, okay? Watch what happens here, okay? Who's in trouble now? Half the battle is believing that you can win. Police officers can't afford to lose a confrontation because if they do, it could mean their life. We practice with a survival mindset. Adjust to the situation as it happens. Practice as many different ways as you can think of, and if you make a mistake, continue, but don't give up. Some ground fighting systems believe that if you don't get up off the ground within 15 to 30 seconds, that you're dead. Our ground fighting system, we believe that if you're down on the ground, the fight's just beginning.
We hope that you found this information valuable. As you can see, if you know how to use tactical ground fighting skills, you can effectively defend yourself from the ground. If you would like information about other informative books and videos, including total survival, interpersonal communication skills, off-duty survival, street signs, supervisory survival, tactical patrol strategies, law enforcement professionalism, and others, please contact your law enforcement book and video dealer. Or, if you can't locate a dealer, contact Performance Dimensions Publishing, P.O. Box 502, Powers Lake, Wisconsin, 531-590502, or phone 414-279-3850. You can also place an order with your Visa or MasterCard by calling toll-free 1-800-877-7413. And please, stay safe.